two, one, two, one, two, one, two. One, two, one, two, one, two, one, two, one, two.
Hello. Hello. Someone. Hello. Okay. Thank you. Hello. Good evening. It's Anne. Hello, evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome you to the 102nd Power Dialogue hosted by the Electricity Hub at next year. My name is Omono Okonkwo, and the team would like to extend a very warm welcome to everyone in the room. Without further ado, I'll just introduce our panelists for tonight. We'll be discussing enforcing climate obligations in Nigeria's industries. So, first up is Mohammed Sanusi. He's our moderator for tonight. Mohammed Sanusi is a passionate climate leader, sustainability advocate, and visionary founder and CEO of Upward Eco Limited, a waste recovery social enterprise in Abuja. Upward Eco bridges the gap between environmental responsibility and economic empowerment, driving the adoption of sustainable practices across households and businesses while fostering a culture of accountability and community resilience. As the National Coordinator of Renewable Energy and Environmental Sustainability for Africa, Mohammed plays a pivotal role in mobilizing young Africans to embrace renewable energy solutions and champion climate action. Mohammed has honed his expertise through advanced training in energy and waste management, leadership, and business analytics. His entrepreneurial journey includes winning the Citizen Diplomacy Grant to launch Upward Echo and the Aspiring Entrepreneur Program with Faith Foundation, affirming his commitment to creating scalable and transformative solutions. Please put your hands together for Mohammed Sanusi as he makes his way to the stage. Thank you. Welcome. Next up is Sheyi Fumi Adebote. He is a leading environmental and communication practitioner with a decade of active and results-proven experience across national, regional, and international scopes. His work intersects environmental policy and strategic communications, as well as multimedia engagements, international diplomacy, and youth mobilization. He hosts the Climate Talk podcast and serves on the board of the Worldwide Environmental Communication Alumni Network and the International Environmental Communication Association. Please put your hands together for Sheyi. We have Ejikeme Patrick Mosu. He is an innovative scientist, inventor, and the Chief Executive Officer of Lumos Laboratories Nigeria Limited. He has over 12 years of experience in the clean energy sector and has developed 7 patented technologies that convert waste into hydrogen-rich gases, providing sustainable energy solutions for industries, businesses, and households. By transforming waste into electricity, his technologies help industries reduce carbon emissions and transition towards cleaner energy sources. Please put your hands together for AG Keme. He's joining us on stage. Last, okay, last but not the least, we have Awele Loretta Ikobi Anyali. She is a senior research fellow of the Nigerian Institute of Advanced Legal Studies. She is currently on secondment to the National Council on Climate Change Secretariat, where she heads the legal unit. She holds a Master of Law degree in Corporate and Financial Law from the University of Glasgow, Scotland, and a Bachelor of Law degree from Delta State University, Nigeria. She is a barrister and solicitor of the Supreme Court of Nigeria. She is an expert in climate change and sustainability law and practice, carbon markets, climate change and ESG compliance. Awele is a member of the Nigerian Bar Association. She holds training certificates in climate change negotiation and understanding, as well as making the African Continental Free Trade Area AFCFTA work. She has volunteered for Amnesty International Project Scotland and other causes. She's also published in several books and journals. Please put your hands together for Awele. Thank you very much. Over to our moderator for the evening, Mr. C.
Good evening, everyone. Um, Thank you very much for this opportunity. As you all know, this is the 102nd edition, and it's a tradition that we always ask the audience to kindly put their mobile phones on silence so that we'll have a very beautiful and wonderful conversation. Thank you, my uh, co should I call you co-host now? Mm, well, the panelists. Now, we'll just jump straight into the conversation, and as we have started, we are going to be talking about enforcing climate obligations in Nigerian industry. And of course, we all know that there are many objectives for this conversation. And the first one is we want to know how do we harmonize the environmental regulations across agencies for us to be able to create a unified climate standard and accountability for industries. Right. So I'll start with you, Ms. Awele. Yes, ladies first. Yeah, ladies first. So, what key legal barriers do we need to be? I beg your pardon. What key legal barriers need to be addressed to successfully harmonize environmental regulations across different government agencies while ensuring effective enforcement? Yes, the mic. Give her that.
Thank you, Mr. San, for the question. So, before I proceed into answering the question, so I'm also representing my Director General, Sondu Tamari,
Okay.
who is on official assignment outside Abuja. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, that's fine. So, going to your question, the illegal barriers that need to be addressed. First of all, I will look at what I term our constitutional provision. Of course, I'm a lawyer and speaking from a legal background. The Constitution is known as organic law or ground norm, wherein all laws in Nigeria derive their validity. And any law that is inconsistent with the provision of the Constitution will be null and void. But having said that, the Constitution makes provision, and we have three tiers of government. We have the federal, we have the states, and we have the local government. So the Constitution gives each of them, of these three tiers of government, power to make laws. And if you look at the provision of the Constitution did not single-handedly state that environmental law or environmental provisions should be the sole jurisdiction of either the federal, the state, or local government. So as a result, we have the federal making laws. For example, we have the NEPRA Act, we have the Environmental Impact Act, we have various biodiversity laws, we have the Climate Change Act 2021. And in that sense, constitutional provision, the states also have environmental provisions. For example, I'm from Delta State, we have the Delta State Environmental Protection Agency, we have Lagos State have theirs, Enugu State. So in this situation, you see that both the federal, the state, and to some extent the local government also make bylaws for when it comes to sewage disposal and all of that. So industries that engage in all these activities, they find it difficult to actually comply, which of the laws are we going to comply with. And in the harmonization process, considering that harmonization, just as, for example, in music, is harmony for everything to be certainty. When I want to do this, this is what I have to do. So bringing them together, how do we now bring the federal laws, the state laws, and the local government laws that pertain to environment? That could be a legal challenge in the harmonization process. Remember that when we are harmonizing, we want a single document. So if I'm dealing with pollution or whatever, I should know, oh, this is the provision. But if the federal law is there, the state law is there, so the companies doing businesses are now turning between, oh, I'll look at the Nigeria law. The Nigeria law says, oh, this is applicable to this environmental law, this is applicable. I look at the state law. So that may bring one or two challenges in the process of harmonization. Because when you look at state laws, they tend to protect a particular interest. The federal government also protects a particular interest. So in the harmonization process, how do you bring all this together to form a single document, looking at constitutional provision, which did not stipulate that it is the federal or state? That's one. Secondly, which is an offshoot of number one, it brings divergence among various domestic procedural regulations. This could also be a challenge. The federal law or the Nigeria Act said, if you want to do this, this is what you follow. The Environmental Impact Assessment Act says, if you want to do this, this is what you follow. Delta State law says, when you do this, this is what you follow, these steps to follow. So it brings divergence among various domestic procedural regulations. And maybe, for instance, maybe the Delta State law says that if you want to initiate environmental proceedings, for instance, you go to the state high court. Let's say the federal act says you go to the federal high court. So in the harmonization process, this could also be a legal barrier. So I also put lack of a legislative framework on harmonization. Yes, we have model laws of harmonization. When you look at international trade law, so many laws out there, they are all harmonized. But then I'm looking at, do we have a framework on how to really harmonize our laws in Nigeria? Or if I just want to harmonize law on environmental law, I follow this. If I want to harmonize a law on trade law, this is what I follow. Do we have a legal framework that guides the harmonization process that states, if I want to harmonize, this is step one, this is step two, this is step three? To me, I think it's also a legal challenge, because if there's a framework that governs the harmonization process, we know, okay, this is what is applicable and this is what we do. And lastly, I have 4 points here. Effects of international obligation on domestic laws and interpretation by international courts. How does this come into play? I believe everyone here in this panel, they are conversant with how environmental law has evolved with time. Look at the UNCCC, look at the Kyoto Protocol, look at the Paris Agreement that brought about the Climate Change Act 2021 and all of that. So because environmental laws are tied to international obligations and interpretation of international courts, to me, it may also be a legal barrier to harmonization. Let's say, for instance, now I want to harmonize all the laws in Nigeria, and suddenly a court in the UK or international court or whatever gives a judgment, then it now affects the local legal framework we have. Don't you think that will be a problem to the harmonization process? Remember, if Nigeria is obligated to an international agreement, you are bound by it and all of that. So I feel it has an effect on harmonization process, because all we want, we are able to pick up one document and say this is what we have. But if along the line, maybe we are all making progress, seeing what is happening. For example, every year we go to conference of parties and new obligations and all of that. Okay, you come back. How do you, in the process of infusing them, or maybe you have even gone far in the process, it comes up. So I believe this is a legal challenge. And lastly, because I'm a legal researcher, I will always involve legal research is also will be a legal barrier. How so? What is the essence of legal research? Go into the field, do research, carry out research, and discover a gap, Jerry. So do we have the capacity to carry out adequate legal research for harmonization processes? If you want to carry out research, you have to review all the laws. Do we have the funding to do that? You have to do stakeholder engagement and all of that. So I think that is also a legal barrier, because the essence of carrying legal barrier, of engaging in research, is to be able to find out, where is this gap? Why do we need to harmonize? Is it as a result of lack of harmonization organization that is making companies not comply. I don't want to enter into someone else's question because I've seen that there's something like that. So, but having said that, in summary, I have listed about 5 legal barriers that may be a hindrance to the harmonization process, because we need certainty, we need a unified system, we need something that we can look up to and say, oh, this is what we have to do. We have a one-stop shop. For instance, in 2021, thereabout, the Startup Act was established. What is the essence of that Startup Act? The Startup Act looked at how all startups can come together and make progress. And that act established a fund for startups. So with this, all tech companies, either SMEs, companies, and all of that, who deal with startups of fintech, for instance, they have a one-stop shop where they can go everything. All the agencies are listed there, and it's stated that they will all put funds from those public agencies and even private entities so that startups can access the fund. So you could see it has given them like a one-stop shop. So when it comes to harmonization, I believe these are the legal barriers. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you for that. So let me go to my far right, Mr. Ejike. How would unified environmental standards impact innovative waste to energy project like yours, particularly regarding permits and compliance for handling biological waste stream?
Okay. Thank you very much, and good evening, everyone. First of all, you're asking how will it impact. To go straight, if it is unified, we're going to have major 2 outputs, which are reduction in time and cost. Let me give an example. We have a project to deliver somewhere within the FCT. We have a contract awarded. We have 3 months to deliver the project, and we need to get an environmental impact assessment from relevant agencies in the Ministry of Environment. We applied, and before the certificate, normally you're not supposed to go to site and start the project because we're converting waste into clean energy. In fact, it was taking 1 month, 2 months, and you need 3 months to complete the project and get your money. So what do you expect the contractor to do in that case? And you need to have human contact. You need to go to the office, see the person and that. So I think if we have this is for EIA alone, the other documents you need to get before you move to site and get the job done. So if we have a unified system where you can get this done with less human contact, where you can maybe go online, download the document, they will check it, do their verification, it will reduce the cost and the time. In Nigeria, let me not talk about other countries. If you have less human contact in getting job done, you spend less and you have the job delivered faster. Then again, I noticed that most of the agencies we have are interested in revenue generation to get the funds from EIA for this, for that, but who cares about whether the job is actually done? That's where the main problem is. Funds are generated, but at the end of the day, the job is not done, and nobody supervises anybody. So we have a lot to do, and I think from the experience I have, the best thing to do is to get the experts to get this job, because from my exposure in chemistry, there are some things I will not sign, even if you give me $1 billion, because I know the impact. We need to get experts, and we need to reward them based on deliverables. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, Mr. Sheifumi, given the multiple regulatory bodies overseeing environmental matters, from the Federal Ministry of Environment to NESRIA to state-level agencies, what practical steps can Nigeria take to harmonize these regulations and create unified climate standards that industry will actually comply?
Thank you very much, Mohammed, and good evening, everyone. It's such a privilege to be here. I was saying to Omono that most on the other side, so it's really good to be here. And very often I'm the one asking the questions, so it's good to be asked questions. And I really leaned on the insights from Awele and Patrick when they spoke earlier. I would start by saying it's probably good for us to understand the basis. And by that, I would say the industries. So the focus today is around industries. And if we really want to define our industries in this context, I think it's easier for us to work with which is the nationally determined contributions. And what that means simply is that Nigeria has sort of evaluated the landscape and has says, what are the industries through which carbon is being emitted in Nigeria? Just before the updated indices, it used to be five sectors. We had the oil and gas, many of you know, and that means all mining. Nigeria currently relies 90% on oil for our revenue, and that's one biggest. I think it's the second largest when it comes to carbon emission. Second is they call it AFOLU, which is the agric, food, and other land use sector. So that means from, planting trees to deforestation to bringing down trees to having a farm and, having cows and the methane emissions from this. That's another sector. Then we have the power sector. We also have the waste sector and the water sector. Those were the two new additions: waste sector, water sector. We have the power sector, I mentioned that, and that's around how you get power into your house, power, energy efficiency, and all that. So understanding that these are the 7 specific industries that Nigeria, or through which Nigeria engages with the industry, is a very good place to start. The second thing that I think is worth knowing is then sort of highlighting what are the policy frameworks that exist. Yes, Awile mentioned, did I get it right? Awile, yes. She mentioned 2 of them. For example, the EIA, which is the Environmental Impact Assessment Act. And it simply means that as an organization, as an industry, before you start something, Patrick also laid emphasis on that, there has to be some check, there has to be some assessment to say, what exactly are you going to do here? What's the impact on the environment? What's the impact on the lives of people? Can we as the government, either state or federal level, can we approve that this project should be done? Will it come at a cost to human? Will it come at a cost to the environment? If it will, what are your plans to remediate that? Away from that is also, there's also, a whole lot of policies from the national policy on climate change, which exists currently. We also have the NESRA Act that established NESRA. NESRA is the agency of the government that is responsible for enforcing all these laws. So from wildlife to agric to oil and gas, all the sectors, as long as it's cross-cut with the environment, NESRA has been empowered to act and to see that those regulations are upheld. Now, if I come back to your question, which is around how can we see that there's multiple regulatory bodies? I would say that primarily there is a singular regulatory body at the federal level, and that is NESRA. Now, NESRA can, based on the power that they have, they can work with across all the existing climate policies or environmental policies, if you like, to say, okay, this is not waste compliant. They can go in there, enforce a law, and make sure that that industry does the right thing. It could be around oil and gas and say, this is not compliant. It could be around any of the sectors across the energy space or the environmental space. So knowing that NESRA has that, the ultimate power from the federal level is a very good knowledge to also have. When you move to the state level, there are, you made some example like LASEPA, LASEMA in Lagos State that enforces different forms of Environmental Protection Act. We also have in a few other states or a few other parts of the country, as well as policies. I know that Lagos, Enugu have very solid climate policies, for example. And recently we've had states like Kano State, Katsina State, and Osun State come up with policy framework we have engaged the legal entities, sort of gone through the legislative arm of government to see that these policies are inclusive and that they are, what's the word? And that there is like a framework, a legal framework to hold people to account at the state level. So I would say that one of the biggest challenge if in this harmonization that you asked is that there is no sync between the federal level and the state level. If you walk up to a federal entity today, start with the Ministry of Environment, for example, and tell the Ministry of Environment to introduce you to the Commissioner of Environment in, say, Jigawa State or Abia State, they probably will run around the place and say, oh, we haven't been in touch with them for a while. And you wonder, but you're the federal, you should have access to these people, you should coordinate with these people very often. So that's, missing bridge, the fact that they are not in sync makes it difficult for federal policies, for example, federal directives to go down to the local level. So it takes states that have foresight, states that say, hey, I'm very much concerned about the state of my environment. I'm very much up to date with the climate impact of what industries come into this space, and I want to see that they are doing the right thing. So except you have leaders at the state level that are thinking like that, there's really no compelling need. And the federal government, as it is today, is not in a place to say, oh, we want to act this way because you're not complying. So I think that one very practical step, which is what your question is asking, one very practical step will be to establish that bridge such that the power that the federal, like NISRA has, can stem down to state level. And policies that come from the federal, like the Climate Change Act, for example, of 2022, can then be 2021, sorry, can then be contextualized in state level. We cannot take it hook, line, and sinker to say, oh, this is what the act says, and we want to work with it. In places like, say, oil producing state, for example, it will mean something completely different to a state that is experiencing deforestation. Their priorities will be different. But at the core of it is still, how do we think around the impact of our economic or industrial activities in context or side by side with environmental impact? So the way they would approach it will be completely different. And I think having that bridge first, and then using that as a stepping stone to then see how we can sync from the federal level to the state level, and then enforce industries will be a good place to start. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Now let's talk a little bit about technology and incentives. Let me start from my far right there, Mr. Ejike. As a pioneer in the waste to energy technology again, what technological and financial support mechanism would most effectively help scale innovative solutions like yours across Nigeria?
Thank you very much. As already introduced, we convert waste to clean energy. When I mean waste, human waste, your urine, your feces, we convert them to clean energy. Yes, even in my house, I have it installed in Abuja here. So, funding, advocacy, and patronage are these three things that I kind of highlighted that will make these two be scaled and be put to better use. Let me start from fund R&D, research and development. You can't do, no matter how good you are, if you don't invest in research and development, if you don't invest in research and development, you'll be out of business sooner than you think, because the world is moving very fast. And unfortunately, in R&D in Nigeria, the money that Huawei used for R&D, I checked a report, I think 2019, the money they used for R&D in 2019 is more than Nigerian budget. A company in China. You understand? So there's no way you can compete. It's not possible. And it is only when you invest in research and development that you come with wonderful products that you can export and use locally and make and become rich. Check the richest companies in the world. and the richest people in the world. It is not obviously crude oil that make them rich. We're in technology age, it's information technology and others. And we don't, unfortunately, and which is true, you can quote me, as of today, I've not gotten a dime from Nigerian government to support R&D. Even the one we got from outside the country for R&D, when the money hit our account, I got a call from FIRS to pay tax. Yes, so I got mad. We are trying to get funds to improve on what we are doing. You don't fund it, you don't finance it, and we're getting some fund that is not even taxable. We are asking for tax. In fact, after that experience, I started looking for ways to maybe leave this country. I'm just telling you the gospel truth. Yes. So if you don't invest in R&D, forget it. Last year, sometime October last year, about 5 companies in US were given funds to develop the hydrogen project, roughly $1 million each, like $1.something million or something, to go and work on your hydrogen technology. Because whether you like it or not, this is where the world is moving to. So I don't know. That's where the main thing is, R&D. We must put money there. One, then advocacy. I remember in 2012 when one of the news agencies interviewed us on waste energy. I was reading comments online. Somebody said, Igbo man, that human blood is no longer giving them money, that they're going to human feces and urine. Do you understand? So when government comes in, environment and others, and start telling them this is actually impossible, it will become easier. So when government gets involved in something, you achieve your results faster. So advocacy is very important. I don't know if all of you here in the class, all of you, is anybody that doesn't know they can use your waste to generate energy? Is anybody that doesn't know that? Or have you seen it? Who has seen it in the country where you can use waste to generate energy? Because we have seen it in Nigeria here. Fine. Okay, only one person I'm seeing or two. So advocacy, is very important. And when it's coming from government angle, it becomes better. Then patronage. You cannot tell me that why I have to put them in my house is no longer, I'm a chemist, I don't like to speak too much. In chemistry, we use equation. Just come and see it. That's the highest form of advert and advocacy and the patronage. If your product is good, you have to use it. If somebody have it installed in Asuro, the president of another country comes, come and see it. Then you cannot tell us that you are saying buying Nigeria to make Nigeria great and you are busy not buying Nigeria. So there must be patronage of what we are doing, even if it's not of the best quality. We must patronize our own. And when there's good R&D, you get the best quality that you can export. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that. Of course, when it comes to incentivizing, awareness is part of it. Buy made in Nigerian goods is one of the awareness we are trying to raise. So yes, let's go to our lady in the house, Madam Awele. What specific legal incentives could be introduced to accelerate the adoption of sustainable technologies across Nigeria industrial sector while ensuring compliance with climate goals?
Thank you very much for that question. Again, legal incentives. I'll just give a little background. Before you have legal incentives, there must be legal framework in place, because you can't just jump to say, oh, I'm giving you this, I'm giving you that. So there must be legal framework works. So first, I will suggest, based on this legal framework that must exist, my first point will be establishing of green banks to enable for access to finance. So usually we have debt and equity ratio under corporate finance. So how does this help? If there's a legal framework that gives support for green banks, that would be very good. Why do I say so? Look at the Bank of Industry. Why was it established? Look at the Bank of Agriculture. Why was it established? Look at the Federal Mortgage Bank. Why was it established? I know we have green bonds and all of that. Companies must disclose under the provisions of the law, on the SEC and all of that. But don't you think it's high time we established a green bank in Nigeria? Because I've been in events and most of the stakeholders, this is what they always say, that if they have a green bank that will enable them access finance, because access to finance is critical to industries, especially those for sustainability and sustainable industries in, for example, renewable energy and all of that. So if they could get this is very important. Like I said before, looking at the Startup Act, I think it has that kind of structure because there is a fund for it. Secondly, grants and subsidies. They are very, very relevant. And remember, legal incentives or legal framework for incentives does not mean that you must actually establish a particular law. You can have an existing law, have it amended, or have it in their regulations. So there's so many options available. So you must not say, oh, let me meet a member of the National Assembly, let them push for this. You could ask for amendments, you could look at the enabling law of an organization, and from there can trigger such incentives. So grants and subsidies are very important. I'm praying for what my Mr. Nwosu said. He has told us his challenges, and to me, is really not a good experience. That takes me to the next step, tax incentives and waivers. They are very critical, and he gave us a practical example. You've worked so hard to get grant. Getting grants is not an easy process. I know what it takes, and at the end of the day, the money comes into your account, and FRS is asking you, come on, that's not good. So we need a strong legal regime for tax incentives and waiver for renewable energy companies. Then we also, for renewable energy and sustainable technology, we also need a legal framework for technology transfer. Why is technology transfer important? Because at times you may not have the people who have the requisite knowledge to do that. So we need a framework that will enable for technology transfer. And you agree with me? Technology transfer is very important for industrial sectors. We may not have the experience, but when you have a framework for technology transfer, that will help. I know under NOTAP, it's there for technology transfer under the NIPC, that's Nigerian Investments Promotion Commission and all of that. But I think for sustainable technologies or in companies or SMEs in this sector, they need a legal framework for technology transfer. So what I'm saying is, for legal incentives to thrive, there must be legal framework. And don't be scared. This legal framework we're talking about is not something that will just come from the blue. I will sit down as a legislative drafter, I will start drafting and all of that. So when you look at the enabling law, there must be a provision that gives the entity power to do that. And with that, I think we'll be on the right path to helping these industries. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Talking about the technology transfer, right? I know, especially when you even talked about the what's the name, the green bank. I know for the international body, we have things like a GEF, which is there, and they are really trying to do within the international space. So going to you now, Mr. Sheifumi, how can Nigeria effectively incentivize both local innovation and technology transfer to help industry transition to more sustainable practices, particularly in high emission sectors like oil and gas, manufacturing, and even agriculture? Give him the mic.
Thank you. I think the simple answer will be that we must take a bet on Nigerian ideas. And by Nigeria, I don't know, I mean, you're not specific. Okay, is it how can the Nigerian government? Is it how can Nigeria among ourselves as Nigerians? So I think either ways, the simple answer will be that we must be ready to take a bet on ourselves, take a bet on our ideas. Until we do that, I mean, see someone like Patrick, I've hosted him on my podcast a few years ago. I know about the incredible things he's been doing. Maybe some of you know about EcoBata, who very recently have this reversed vending machine. People call it the bottle ATM, where you put your bottles into it and then it gives you some units that can go to your bank account, or you can convert it to other forms of usable funds or donate it to charity. These are Nigerian ideas. These are ideas by Nigerians. Quite all right. It's not that these things have not happened in other parts of the world. We've probably seen something similar, and we sort of model our own way of designing what works here in Nigeria. But then, who is taking a bet on these Nigerians that have these ideas or that are trying to bring out these innovations or trying out new technology to solve, to reduce carbon emissions across different sectors? Not so many. And that's what I would say. The first thing to do is that we must, as Nigerians, be able to say, hey, I want to take a bet on a Nigerian idea. And that goes to, the VCs, those people with the, angel investors, different funding mechanisms that are Nigerian owned. If we step out a little bit, I agree. Probably the easy way out is getting grants, getting some funds from the international organizations. But I do think that when we look at diplomatic cooperation also, there could be other more efficient ways of scaling up innovation or sort of funding innovative ideas. And that's through exchange program. It's easy it's easy for the US, for example, to say, hey, we're looking for guys who have ideas around waste to energy, and we want to bring them to the US to see how we are driving or how we're supporting waste to energy projects. There and then you can see, okay, these are companies that are doing this. What approach are they bringing forward? How are they funding themselves? Who are the people interested? What's the mechanisms for getting their money back? It's very interesting when people talk about climate change and they don't want to talk about the money component of it. Or when they talk about, being environmentally friendly and they don't want to talk about the money of it. If there is anything that I want you all to take away from the conversation tonight, is that people will not do good just because it's good to do good. It's just human, if we have to be very honest. Sometimes they need that incentive to say, hey, I have used this bottle and now I need to find, instead of throwing it away, I think if I give it to someone or if I use it for something, then I can get some money back. Then they are more enthused to do that. And the same thing for businesses. Businesses are out there to make money, and that's the truth. Put all the legal frameworks as much as you want until you also get them to say, hey, we can take a bet on you. You talked about, waivers and incentives. For example, in the industrial sector, there's something called the import duty credit certificates, which means that if you meet some criteria, if you're bringing in or if you're sort of importing equipment for some reasons, then you get some waivers off completely. There's also something called tax rebates that is happening even here in Nigeria, but not many of them connect this with the environmental components. You see them connecting it with the industrial, we want to industrialize. Just show us how this business or this importation will sort of improve the industry sector. Or they're just saying, just tell us how this will sort of improve that raw materials are not being exported and that you're exploring some of the value chain. But how about we take a bet or we create framework, tax framework, rebates, incentives, import duty waivers that makes it possible for companies that are working specifically for the good of the environment to then thrive. That, I think, is very much missing. And you talked about some of this international framework. For example, there's the Basel Convention that is meant to stop, e-waste from other parts of the world being dumped in places like Nigeria, because that's what we have today. And because our policies are so loose and we really do not have this framework to enforce this law. So even where there are international frameworks or international conventions that have clearly stated that, hey, this is not the right way to do things, it's still up to countries, it's still up to, independent or parties, as the UN likes to call them. It's still up to these parties to say, we want to enforce this law. We have this global framework that says this is the right thing to do, but we as a country, we as a party to that convention, we want to see that it works. So I hope this answers your question that we shouldn't wait for the likes of, the GCF, which is the Global Environmental Fund or the Global Climate Fund, or the UN agencies to take a bet on Nigerian ideas. I think we among ourselves, banks in Nigeria, financial institutions in Nigeria, investors in Nigeria should be able to take bet on Nigerian ideas and see that they thrive. And secondly, the second thing that I mentioned is that when we also look at diplomatic cooperation for support, we shouldn't just look at aids from them. We should be able to think about what are some exchange programs that can help us see some best practices. How is it working over there? And how can we model or put it in the context of what will work here in Nigeria? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hold on. I need to give you a follow-up question for that, because talking about this innovation and technology transfer idea, right? We have to find a way to make Nigeria a hub, right? So let me ask you this question. As Nigerians strive to become an African industrial hub, how can we design our policies that leverage our competitive advantages, like our young workforce? You've already mentioned that we should believe in ourselves first, right? And abundant renewable energy resources, while ensuring industries meet their climate obligations without sacrificing economic growth.
Great. Maybe to answer this question, I would reflect on an experience from 2019. So in 2019, the United Nations wanted to, or they were putting together a group of young people that could advise the Secretary General at the time. And I was one of the 30 people selected. And we had very good experiences from New York to UAE, across the world. And when I came back, I said to my colleague, we cannot waste all of these ideas and experiences. And we had someone who took a bet on us. Probably you know him, Dr. Peter Tafa. He was at the time the director for the Department of Climate Change before the NCC was carved out of it. And he said, this is great. Can you put it in writing? And we did, the paperwork. And maybe I should mention that we should not be afraid to do the paperwork. It could be boring, but any ideas that you have, no matter how, convincing you speak, you still need to put it on paper. There are places you will not be in, but if you are able to articulate it very clearly, people can see it and say, this is a good idea, and run with it. Back to what I was saying. So we did the paperwork, wrote this project concept note, and said we wanted to have a climate change hub in Nigeria. He looked at it and he took a bet on us. Back to the point I was saying, we must take a bet on ourselves, on our ideas. And he approached the UN, I think it was the UNDP at the time, and later UNIDO came in. And we had what we call the Nigerian Climate Change Hub, Youth Climate Change Hub. Yes, Nigerian Youth Climate Change Hub, which was, the idea was we went across, or we put out a call, and we had over 1,000 ideas. Yes, some of them were very crude and not fully formed. Others were really genuine ideas. And we looked at these ideas and sort of selected such that we had at least 2 ideas from every state across Nigeria. So across the 36 states, including Abuja, we selected at least 2 ideas, and we brought them together for this regional hub across the 6 regions. And we brought them together, sort of presented them the context of climate change, helped them understand how their business ideas could connect with the global conversations around climate change. And after that, we had a boot camp where we then make them understand, okay, this is how to make an elevator pitch, this is how to work out your finances, this is how to see that this idea does not just die and that you can thrive with it. And I would say that looking back, it's 5 years now, looking back, I mentioned Ecobata, for example, she was part of it. If you know Plug in Nigeria, they're part of it. Like many ideas that are out there today, many of the young-led ideas that are out there today, I can confidently say that in one way or the other, they were part of that Youth Climate Hub back in 2019. And there are many more that are still growing today. So I do think that, I mean, like I said, government needs to take that bet. We as young people or, business people or people with ideas, we should be able to not just present these ideas, but also articulate it on paper and follow through with it. And the point I made earlier is that when we didn't get any, funds to say, oh, this is a good idea, take X, Y, Z. But we got partners that said, we want to run this. We'll take care of the accommodation. We'll pay the per diem for the people. And I mean, I hope that answers your question, but I do think that that is one of the many possible ways to engage the young force to see that we're thinking or sort of building up ideas that are not just good for the environment, but good for business in itself.
Yeah, of course. If you want to really make the environment proud, you have to bring in the business angle. So let's go back to the legal practitioner in the house again. How can new climate policies be structured to enhance Nigeria's competitive advantage in international market while ensuring meaningful emission reduction?
Once again, thank you. This question, well, I'll just go to what I've prepared. Because firstly, I would say, of course, alignment with climate obligation is important. And have we been able to do this? Yes. From the UNCCC, Kyoto Protocol, Paris Agreement, and all of that. We came back from the Paris Agreement, having signed and all of that. We enacted our Climate Change Act. So that's the first step. And under the Climate Change Act, there are so many provisions and all of that so that we can meet these international obligations. So first, we are grateful that we've been able to align with international obligations. Then secondly, I'll look at, I think he mentioned NDCs. So I think it's also one of the ways of achieving that. And I think the next one is due by February. So I think my office, we are also working towards that and all of that. So when you look at the NDCs, you will see that there are provisions, at least there are targets and all of that for you to comply with the international obligation. Then another is the carbon markets. So the carbon market is like the in thing now, permit that word, under Article 6 of the Paris Agreement and all of that. So through the carbon market, you can buy and sell instruments that relate to greenhouse gas emissions and all of that. So that is still upcoming. Other countries have done, and Nigeria, of course, under the climate change. So we are trying to see how we can do that, because I believe the carbon market is a very stable tool to achieving those international obligations and that. So I've mentioned updating our NDC. So under also the Climate Change Act is very critical to this question that you asked me. And we are also trying to make, for example, under the Climate Change Act, it is stated that we should have climate desk in all governments and public and private entities. You may ask, how does this ensure meaningful reductions? When, okay, we've been talking about climate change. I don't know the organizations that many of us are working, but if I ask how many of us here, even our offices, have idea of what climate change is all about? Or how many of us have climate change desk? Can I see by raise show of hands? No. So, but if we don't begin to do that, how do we even meet the targets and able to say, okay, this is our area of competitive advantage and how to achieve that? So it is also part of the things we are doing to ensure that we meet, enhance Nigeria's competitive advantage. So of course, we have various adaptation and mitigation measures, and also we are trying to, I think nature-based solutions will always come in. So Nature-based solution, it tends to be technical to an extent, but in my opinion, these are the things we should align properly with our policies, with our even our energy transition plans and all of that. So that is my contribution, but we should focus on the fact that at least we are aligning our policies to all these international climate obligations and commitments.
Thank you very much. Of course, Mr. Ejike, the waste to energy innovator. How has this your innovation positioned Nigeria in the green technology market? And what policies would help similar ventures maximize their economic potential?
Thank you very much. Well, we have actually done we have done a number of things that can make people or from within the country outside to know that waste to energy is a reality. We have implemented a number of projects. We have multiple patents. And though most people are interested or know about waste to biogas, but our main core strength is conversion of liquid waste into hydrogen-rich gases. The hydrogen is the cleanest source of energy because it burns with it's carbon neutral, no carbon. The byproduct is water vapor. We do that. And we have been able to implement some projects within the country and have attracted some funds from outside from North America to maybe improve our research. And even there was recently last year, there was a call from Innovate UK for companies that can convert waste to electricity from within the country and outside. And our company was the one that at the end of the day that was selected, and we are doing wonderfully well on that project. Then we have been able to showcase through what we do on clean tech. Recently, December last year, Timbuktu Clean Tech project in Kenya and the UNDP. We are among a few companies from around Africa selected. In fact, Kenya seems to be very serious in clean tech. We are serious, but they seem to be more serious in that. We have done a number of things to showcase. 2 years ago, there was a hydrogen tour we participated in Germany, Frankfurt. I don't know how they even view us. They were surprised when we were talking about hydrogen. They never knew that there's a kind of hydrogen project in the country. And when I did the research, well, except somebody proves me wrong now, I think we are the first and only company that has used hydrogen to generate energy in use, no matter how small, no matter how big the scale is. So they were surprised to see that somebody can talk about hydrogen from Nigeria. Why they're better than us from all I've seen there is they have the resources, they have the infrastructure and the equipment. That's all. You know, even recently, I did H Accelerator program that recently, this week, 2 Ivy League students were attached to us to work with us. So we have actually done the little we can within our capacity, much what we can do when we have some support or more support. Then on policy, I've mentioned hydrogen a number of times. Hydrogen is the cleanest energy. Even the solar we talk about, solar energy, where is the solar energy coming from? It's also hydrogen, because from the sun, the energy from the sun is actually from radioactivity, which is hydrogen going to helium, helium back to hydrogen. It's actually hydrogen, you know. So unfortunately, Nigeria as of now don't have a clear hydrogen policy. And if you don't have hydrogen policy, nobody's going to give you, nobody's bringing money in that sector. Countries like Egypt, Kenya, and some other countries in Africa have been able to attract billions of euros, billions of dollars in hydrogen technology, in hydrogen projects. But we don't have a clear hydrogen policy from the best of my knowledge. In fact, last year, 2 years ago, there have been a number of meetings, GIZ, Ministry of Power, Environment, Science and Tech, which have always been most of the time invited to participate. They are working hard, but as maybe the policy jobs document came out yesterday, but from my best of knowledge, we don't have that policy. Is this document that investors will look at from outside the country? Okay, see the policy before they bring funds. We don't have that. So when you say people leaving Nigeria to other countries, sometimes it's not just to go and look for money. You understand? If you don't have, you are doing hydrogen, you don't have a hydrogen policy. So it's actually so challenging, but we believe and hope that it will be worked on. So these are little we have done to showcase Nigeria in green tech market, and I believe that this hydrogen policy should be worked on. Again, recently we discussed with Minister of Environment of one of the states in the country. They are trying to work on a policy where soakaway will be illegal in homes, construction of soakaways. You know, they're trying to introduce digester, which manages the waste better, and they're actually, you know, having your waste going out like that, having a CO2 going out, methane going out is worse than containerizing them, producing methane. You can even actually earn carbon credits from that. I'm correct, right? Yeah. So, that's it. I think we'll keep getting there gradually. Thank you.
Of course, we'll get there. The most important thing is we always need to have a starting point. Now, before we move to the next round of the questions, let's give the audience some opportunities to throw in some questions. We have some of our audience online, and of course, our audience are here. So this is an opportunity for us. If you have any questions that you really you want it to be answered by one of our panelists or all of them, this is the best time. You can just do by show of hand, and of course, the mic will be passed across to you. Okay.
Thank you very much. My name is Engineer Basil Ozulonye. It's actually very heartwarming to see a fellow renewable energy professional on the panel tonight. One challenge that we actually face in renewable energy is awareness, enlightenment, education. There are so many assumptions about something like hydrogen you're talking about. When you asked if there's people who know about waste to energy conversion, I took part in a 140 kTA biogas digester development 2022. And ever since I've been in that field, but I'm a solar practitioner, you know, for the major. So the problem we have, I was saying earlier, is awareness, education. How much have you done as a professional and maybe with your organization to increase the education among Nigerians about the use or the importance of converting waste to hydrogen, which you claim is a very clean energy? Moderator, permit me, I have maybe one question for the other panelists, just very quickly. To our barrister, you are is it member of the Climate Committee, National Climate Committee? Okay, you work with them. Because if we had a nursery staff, I would have asked them this question, but I think you're the most appropriate person that would answer this. Our vehicles also form part of the pollution that we suffer in our environment. Can she speak to that? Is there anything that your organization, the people you're working with, are doing in this regard? And just before I sit down, Mr. Shea, we have a lot of technology, we have a lot of e-waste in our country. Don't you think that manufacturers of these equipment should be responsible in some way for retrieving the waste generated from use of their equipment? You see lots of computer waste and electrical waste transformers that are decommissioned, some people don't know how to dispose of the oil or the SF6, the vacuum. And this applies across other technology installations. Don't you think, or do you think rather that these manufacturers should be responsible for retrieving the waste that's generated from the use of their systems? Thank you.
Okay. Mr. HK, you want to start?
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. The question on what we have done or how much we have done on publicity. Well, as a private organization, we have actually done so much. We have, in fact, those that follow me on social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, and everything, know that 80% of my posts, if not more than, is on what we do. You know, actually, the fund we got from North America was actually for social media. That the man saw us and just inboxed me that they're interested. I never approached them. Do you understand? So we've done a lot of. If you check, you can even see some posts I made on 2012 about this. So we have done a lot. We have granted interviews, you know, and we have sponsored excursions where some students which visited our site, you know. We have done training. One of our projects where we converted waste to energy in one of the places in the country, one of the inmates that we trained, the guy was so good, I promised him that if he's out or when he's out, because I saw the guy has good character, that I will take him. And the guy, when he came out, and we are carrying him along in implementing projects. And we do some, and when we do projects or when we do training, those that have done wonderfully well, we do have their records. And when we're implementing, I check those that are available and take them. In fact, we're training on many youths in this. In fact, some of them, with or without any other thing, they can stand on their own from what they've learned from us. So these are things we have actually done, you know, the little we can within our capacity to showcase and give publicity on waste to energy. On the hydrogen aspect, the same thing goes also. But just that most people don't really know much about hydrogen, but we are doing what we can, because once the hydrogen, if you are not a basics, if you have not been to science class from SS1, SS2, you know, it will become difficult to know what is hydrogen. So, but as I say, we'll convert your waste to energy or to cooking gas. You use your waste to produce cooking gas. It becomes easier for anybody to get. But if you start going deep, we'll start now telling you the hydrogen. If you go deeper, can now say, is it by electrolysis or by chemical reaction? But we're actually doing much in this area of publicity. And we have from Ministry of Environment, Power, Science and Tech. We've actually consulted for all these ministries, you know, based on proposals we're giving them on what we do, and have visited our plant, and you know, that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So you talked about vehicles or what we're doing about that. So I believe, and I stand to be corrected, that I believe vehicles, they emit greenhouse gas, right? Yes. So if we all are, and if you look at the function, it's part of the things we are set to reduce. Remember, we are set to net zero. We have target of 2050. So it may not be specifically listed in the art or other things we are doing, but if it's a part of a greenhouse gas emitter, then it is part of the things we are doing to work towards net zero 2050. Thank you. hope I answered your question. Or was I very, very legal? But I think that is it. It is. So that's why I asked the question. If you all agree that it's part of greenhouse gas emission, then it's part of what we are doing because our function is to reduce greenhouse gas emission and then align with global best practices or international obligations. So vehicles should be a part of it. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Engineer B, if I can call you that. Maybe I could just reflect very quickly to your question that was directed at Ms. Sawele. When I was mentioning the different nationally determined contribution sector, transportation is one of them. And I think it's somewhere around the fourth in terms of the highest emitter. And I mean, we have over, the last statistics that I read says we have over 10 million cars out there in Nigeria. And I would say that no doubt, transport sector is a big emitter. Is it easy to work with? Maybe with mass transport system, with train systems, more buses, then we can very significantly reduce the emissions from the transport sector. Now to the question that you directed at me, very recently I've been working around e-waste in Nigeria, so it's very interesting that you asked that question. First, there is something called the EPR. It means the Extended Producer's Responsibility, and it's operational from plastic bottles. I see a Seaway plastic bottle there, for example. And what it means is that the producer of these bottles, Seaway, I don't know if they will watch this. I'm not advertising for them. I'm probably just calling them out. It means that they are responsible not just for the content, not just for the water. After you finish the content, what happens to the container? They are responsible for that. Part of the money you paid for this is so that they can be responsible to take care of the container. And that applies also, that Extended Producers Responsibility Act applies also for e-waste. I could use general figures, for example, to tell you that across the world, there are about 62 million tons of e-waste. Nigeria is the third largest when it comes to e-waste. But to make it graphical, just imagine 500 containers of e-waste coming into Nigeria. That was as of 2019, 500 containers. So imagine a 40-foot container, and you're driving 500 of them of e-waste coming into Nigeria every year. That tells you the huge menace that e-waste is causing in Nigeria. So yes, it's a big problem. And I think that enforcing that EPR, which is already operational in Nigeria. I mean, it is a working document in Nigeria, but it's not been enforced as much. But enforcing it should be the very simple answer to your question. That way we can curb not just e-waste, but also plastic waste and other forms of waste. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, have someone.
Hello? Okay. Good evening, everyone. I wanted to say something about the reduction in emission in the transport sector that you pointed at. Currently, there is a presidential initiative on compressed natural gas. And that initiative involves the use of CNG for transportation and EVs, electric vehicles. You know, those ones do not emit any greenhouse gases. Now, CNG is seen as a transition fuel, you know, because it reduces, it doesn't emit as much as PMS or diesel. So Nigeria is actually working actively to reduce emission in the greenhouse sector. So another thing I wanted to talk about is what he already spoke about, the bottlenecks you face. For instance, you go to submit the application for an EIA assessment, and the ministry creates all sorts of bottlenecks. Like you said, you might have 3 months to implement the project, and it takes you 3 months to get the ministry to even move, you know, and somehow you just wonder, why are they not moving? You're even ready to pay the legal amount, but it seems they want more than, just what you remit to the government. And then I also believe that it's our responsibility as the people who these things affect to put some pressure on such organizing, what I call it is organized inefficiencies, because it's deliberate and systemic, right? We also have to form a system that opposes it. That way we can make faster progress and do more. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have someone here. Let's balance the equation.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Busayo, and my question is going to majorly to Ms. Awele and Mr. Shea. So you made mention of a few things. For instance, you made mention of how like international policies influence our local policies. You made mention of how we should bet on our local ideas, and you also made mention of. You also made mention of how we can be talking about climate and funding. So now we know Poches have already said for the next 90 days, no more funds is coming to Africa. And we know most of these influences of the foreign policies, climate policies that affect Nigerian policy is because they're being backed up with some level of incentive. For instance, we are giving you this amount of money for this amount of money for that. So my point is basically, I would want to say, I'm not sure how accurate this is, but I would want to say that the green industry in Nigeria is heavily backed on by foreign aid, foreign development. We see, for instance, now I'm sure the grant you collected is not from Nigerian organization, it's not international organization. Most of the times, we're all applying to all these foreign institutions. So now that POTUS have said no more aid, it means indirectly it means that the USAID funding might shrink, and the global north, they have a way of determining the lives of the global south. So now the US have said this, we are not sure if the EU would actually say, okay, let's actually shift back. We're not sure if AFDB will say, let's actually shift back. And Nigeria is one of the largest economies in Africa. 5 countries take about half of Africa's GDP, and Nigeria is amongst that's about $3.1 trillion. And half of it, Nigeria is part of this country. So how do we become independent? That I know it's going to be very hard, and to an extent, these aids, they're actually marring the situation of Nigeria's development. So how do we become independent in such a way that aids or without aids, we are good to go? Thank you.
Thank you, Busayo. First, thanks to the gentleman who made those contributions about the CNG in the transport sector. Thank you. Busayo, I don't know how to answer your question. That's the honest truth, because it's a very hard question. But I would say, without at the risk of delving into global politics, I do think that the other, for example, the EU, will not shrink back. They would rather see it as an opportunity to put their foothold on, the African continent or other countries that rely on them. That's the way global politics work, I can tell you that. But not to delve into that, I agree with you that from research to implementation, most of the funding or most of the advancements in the green space, as we love to call it, is very much influenced by the international community. And like I said, it may mean something different in terms of figures, but we still need to take a bet on ourselves, on our ideas, the little resources that we can sort of rely on. That would be my simple answer. But like I said, it's a very, very hard question, and it's also very much tied to global politics, which I don't want to share my very personal opinions on. Thank you.
Like when you raised the question, I was like, you should go first because it's just something that just happened yesterday and all of that. So, but from what he said, I think we should look inwards also. There was a project we were doing in our institute then. We had to approach the T.Y. Danjuma Foundation and they do collaboration with some schools in South Africa and all of that. So if they are removing this aid from us, can we look inwards? What are our own people doing to boost climate policies? You may never know. It's all, you always look out to US and all of that. You don't know if there's someone out there who has huge money to spend on Africa and Nigeria. You never know. Before I joined the Insta, I never knew of anything TY Danjuma Foundation that they have lots of funding for a particular project and all of that. And it has been running for the past 10 years. So it is an eye-opener for us to look inwards. And just as he said, I think in a situation like this, the EU will want to prove that, oh, fine, if America cannot do it, we can actually do it. But it is high time we stopped holding onto their aprons and try and do something for ourselves. You may say Nigeria does not have the money. Who told you that we don't have the money? Now, I'm just saying, so it's high time we looked inward to see what we can do. That's my contribution.
The last question before we. Okay. All right. Thank you.
So good evening, everyone. My name is Benjamin Mukor. I work with the Global Center for Law, Business and Economy. We are the organizers of the Africa Climate Forum. So I'm going to let me be a troublemaker a little bit. Your topic says enforcing climate obligations in Nigeria's industries. But my question is, why do you want to enforce when you have not mainstreamed, right? Because for you to enforce something, you need to mainstream first, and people need to know about their obligations. They need to understand what their duties are. And, you can now, first of all, you need to work on voluntary compliance. And when people have defaulted, you can say, okay, we want to enforce. So building on that, I would say, I'll go back to Awele's contribution earlier about harmonization. Now, first of all, talking about harmonization, you need to understand the nature of climate obligations. They are stated as more or less targets, right? And based on these climate obligations, which are framed at the international level, you have your implementing laws at the national level. And if you go to I've looked at our Climate Change Act, I've looked at the one for South Africa, I've checked the one for Kenya. Most of these laws are not supposed to be standalone legislations. They are supposed to be like creating a set of KPIs that you use to enforce climate compliance across sectors in your economy. So talking about harmonization, you can look at it from that way. So you go back to the act and say, okay, what are these KPIs? And one of the things that really helps you to understand what you need to do when it comes to, I don't want to use the word enforcing, mainstreaming, right? So one thing that really helps is looking at the reporting frameworks. So the reporting frameworks, they have reporting categories, which actually just tell you what you need to be doing in the industries to mainstream. So you have governance, you have strategy, you have risk management, metrics, and targets. So you have, first of all, to ensure that you teach people how to, because you are going to report, but what are you reporting on? Do you even know what your obligations are? So people don't even know what they ought to do. I mean, you're talking about going to the industry to enforce climate obligations. Somebody in the petroleum industry has a different set of obligations, than someone in plastics or petrochemicals and maybe agriculture. So people need to understand this. And then when you have done that, you can now say, okay, we are going into a phase where we'll start enforcing. As a matter of fact, Nigeria has adopted IFRS S1 and S2 reporting standards on a voluntary basis for now. And in the future, most countries have done that. And in the future, they'll start enforcing it. There'll be mandatory requirements. So that's what we should be looking at. Taking these KPIs and contextualizing them within different sectors. So voluntary compliance before enforcement. And talking about voluntary compliance, we will now get to the issue of incentivizing. And I just want to mention in relation to the Startup Act that she mentioned, I like the fact that you mentioned the Startup Act. The definition of a startup in the Startup Act is so limited that it's limited to tech. So renewable energy startups are not covered. So that's something we need to look at. It doesn't mean that there are no incentives. Even prior to the Startup Act, there are pioneer status, incentives scattered across different Nigerian statutes and laws. But we need to have something that is targeted at the renewable energy sector. If we really, really need to, encourage renewable energy adoption and emissions reduction, and most renewable energy companies are actually startups. They are small-time players. So if you omit startups from renewable energy companies from the Startup Act, I think that's a major omission we need to rectify. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And
So thank you very much, Doctor. I reviewed the Startup Act, and it was part of the issues we raised. Why will it be restrictive? And I think if you look at the Startup Act, it even gave like companies within 10 years or something. So that's for the startup. So I don't know what the framers of the law or whoever sponsored the law, but that is critical. So, and I also agree with you that before we even talk about harmonization, we should talk about mainstreaming them. And what do we do at NCCCS? We have started. If you look at our laws, it said that there should be climate change desk in all ministries, departments, and agencies. And we've triggered that. We are working on it. And also, the law provides that the Minister of Finance should also ensure that the budgetary allocations on climate matters should be included by all MDAs, that's ministry, departments, and agencies. And NCCCS is doing that. So it is when the people are aware and it has been mainstreamed. I agree with you, because when I saw the paper, I was like, okay, fine. We should have started from somewhere before getting to the harmonization, but I don't know the intention of the organizers. But then I agree with you that before you talk about enforcement, it should be mainstream. It is when it is now mainstream that will now, compliance issues will definitely arise and all of that. And the Act made it clear that in every organization, there should be a compliance officer. I think not less than level, I've forgotten, I'm not too sure about the level, but a director to supervise the climate change desk, and we are working on it. That was why I asked the question, how many of us here have climate change desk in our offices? So it's in the law and we have triggered it, and very soon we will see that. However, thank you very much for your contribution.
Thank you very much. That was a very wonderful questions that we've all put forward. So yes, we have the last round of questions, but of course we are really running on some other people's time now. What we'll do is we'll just briefly take the question response, then we can call it a wrap. Now, I'll start with you, Sheifumi. With Nigerians' history, that's of regulatory enforcement challenges, what specific mechanism and penalties would make our climate obligations truly binding for industries, and how can we ensure transparent monitoring without stifling business growth?
Thank you. I think engineer has answered that question very clearly, and I really don't have anything to add. I could just say that, for example, we have this thing called the UN Global Compact, which is sort of, like you said, you have this certification, you have this checklist, and once you check this list, then you make it to this list, and it gives you some level of authenticity as a company. There's also the sustainability index, that shows, okay, how compliant are you with sustainability? And we've sort of addressed how, we cannot hamstring people without first making it possible or making them aware in the first place, mainstreaming it before we then put in place this policies to enforce. So I would say that if there is anything that I would love to see to make this possible, would be to make systems work, to make it systemic, like Patrick mentioned earlier, where we have less human contact. You know, as an organization, you go into the system, you put in this, and then it tells you where you stand. Think of it as a recruitment exercise where you have maybe 1,000 people applying for a role, and there is a system that just filters and says these are the top 10 or top 20 that matches what you're looking for. So I think having that system that companies know that I need to do 1, 2, 3 to match up to this, and I don't have to contact people, I don't have to bribe my way through to get these standards. I think that could be something that we can aim towards as a very low-hanging fruit. Thank you.
Okay, Mrs. Awele, Miss Awele, sorry about that. What specific enforcement mechanism and penalty structure would be most effective in ensuring industry compliance with climate regulation while maintaining transparency?
He mentioned one earlier. I will still say what we have in our laws, because I've been saying, okay, fine, how do we do this? So the most common one is the polluter's pay principle, and it's provided for under even the NESRA, and also producer extended liability, as he said earlier. But all these things are there, but is it really helping? So I wouldn't know, but to me, it's supposed to be, it's a very good structure, because he made mention of seaway and all of that, but these people, they don't do this. They, even if, so we have it littered everywhere. And I think sometime 2 weeks ago, there was this thing trending on WhatsApp that I don't know how many people saw it, that in the national hospital, people that had hepatitis, and they picked up the bottles or whatever they use, and this goes back to the society, like people that say, you know, this Zobo and all these things. So the health hazard involved and all of that. So, but this is what polluter pays principle is supposed to do. So it's one of the mechanisms. Then producer extended liability, which I think there's a policy on it under the NESRA Act. And then we can also, the polluter pay principle can also be applied through carbon tax, which is an upcoming thing. And of course, Nigeria, we do not really have a legal framework for it, but it is something that we can do. So if you talk about administrative sanctions, well, it could work. It may also not work, considering the nature of how things are run in Nigeria. And lastly, I would just add real-time monitoring through using of artificial intelligence. Well, do we have the people that have the requisite knowledge to do that? So these are the things we should also consider. He made mention of research and development. I say for a country to progress, research and development is critical. And if the government can venture into research and development in AI real-time monitoring, I think that will also help. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, Mr. Ejike, of course, as a company that is working on the biological waste conversion, what transparency measures in enforcement will help legitimate green energy businesses while effectively identifying violators?
Thank you very much. I think there should be proper registration, monitoring, and the evaluation of the whole process. But the main problem is this: are we sincere about this? Both from the government and from our own individual angle. How sincere are we about this? Do we know about the dangers, the impact of this? There's a state government in the country that once invited us to do assessment on what should be done. We visited a dump site. In my presence, you see what we call this truck that evacuates fecal waste from such a way. They were dumping them in flowing water. Pictures and video, document what should be done. Yes, and nothing was done. Then the question is this: what happens to our human waste? All of us. What happens to them? Nobody cares. Where do they end up? When the sock away gets filled, they suck it and put them where? What we do is a waste relocation. We carry waste from our house, dump them somewhere. Yes, that's what we do. We don't manage. I think, is this Sweden, one country in Europe, some years ago, they were so effective in waste management that they ran out of waste because they used the waste to generate energy. And they had to import waste from Africa. So, what happens to our waste? How sincere are we about it? Is it just about registering people, collecting money? What happens to them? We need to really think about this and be conscientious about getting them done. So we have to do proper registration, sincere monitoring and evaluation, so that if a truck is being seen doing this, and because it cannot hold them because you didn't make a provision on where they will actually get this disposed. Check the dump site now that you do this night, you see fire. In fact, I have a video there somewhere, you see fire, they burn them at night in this FCT. So we have to be serious about these things. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Of course, we have to be serious about it. So we've come to a stage where we've have a lot of conversation around the topic. Before I give a summary, I would like to have some closing remark and some recommendations from the panelists, starting from my far right, Mr. Ejike. Please, let's hear your closing remark.
Okay, thank you very much. My recommendation is this. I think a few years ago, I released a publication that says that the waste that we generate is enough to supply our energy needs. The waste that we generate is enough to supply our energy needs. The way I see it, even from the way another person may see it. So we don't have any reason to say that we're having energy problem. And if we can have power in this hall, for how long have I been here? I think I've been here for over an hour. If we can have electricity here for 1 hour, and it means that we can have it for 24 hours in Nigeria if we are serious about it. The main thing is that we are not sincere about this whole thing. Some of us have solar or other sources of energy 24/7 in our homes. And if we are sincere, we can have them 24/7 in the country, and it will be cheaper because government is involved. The issue that we are not sincere about many things we do. And the organizers of the program, where does this program end? Is it going to the desk of government or to private? Where is it ending? I don't know. You have to be sincere about all these things. That's what I want you to take home. Whatever you are doing, don't just look at it. How is it affecting me, affecting us? And to start asking this question and be serious about these things, we may just be revolving and dreaming to go to America or Dubai, whereas we can make it better than those places. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the organizer. So my closing words will just be, I'm from the government side, and I'll just say that government is trying its best to ensure we have this clean energy. It may not sound good to you. Yeah, so we are getting there. And to start with, the Climate Change Act is here. We have an indefatigable Director General who is working towards ensuring that we meet our climate goals. And it involves you and I to be able to achieve that. We are working towards mainstreaming it before at least holding people responsible. And I don't know, though harmonization is very good, but then the ones or the laws that are existing, what are we doing with it? So we have that enforcement and implementation gap that is ongoing, and it's very critical that we address that issue. Having said that, just like you said, at the end of this conversation, what comes out of it? If you are going to issue a communique, what do you do with the communique? Who are you going to direct it to? And all of that. So it's not about us talking about it, but we should take action as individuals and as governments. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think my closing thoughts will be to say that I came here to learn. I have learned a lot, and I'm grateful for that. And I do believe that for many of you that are here also, it's because you're really hungry to learn and to really understand more when it comes to the complexities around climate change and how we engage with it. So my closing thoughts will be that you stay hungry, you keep learning, and with this collective knowledge, we can do something really tangible in the near future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you to my wonderful audience. So today we've been able to look at how to enforcing climate obligations in Nigerian industries, and some of the key take-homes that we've been able to hear the panelists talk about are the first, and one that really stick to my head is from Mr. Sheifumi here. He said, we need to take a bet on ourselves, which is very, very important. And also, another very important aspect that came out was, as of today, although he wasn't sure if it has been released today, but we still don't have a clear hydrogen policy. And from our legal practitioners and even Sheifumi here, he also noted that we should try our best not to be afraid of paperwork. It can be boring, yes, but please, let's try to do it. Then we also heard that we need a more strong legal frameworks, policies, and even some of those documents for us to be able to do well in the industry. And another very key aspect that also was brought out by Mr. Ejike was we should also, at our organizational level, to invest more in R&D, which is very, very important. He noted that in some countries, just their R&D budget alone is more than what we are budgeting for. Oh, a company, not even country. So their R&D section alone is budgeting funds that is more than a national budget. So it's very, very important that we should look at the advocacy, the awareness, just like when one of our, someone from the audience also commented that, yes, before we talk about enforcing, we should first look at how do we get people to be aware about the rules and the obligations that we have as individuals and companies. Then, so we, very, very importantly, is something that we must always take home, which is in whatever that we are doing, how sincere are we as an individual to it? At the government level, at the business level. What is our sincerity to that? So the last question that I will want to put forward to everyone is, in everything you are doing from today, either is in the environmental space, the green space, or even within our society at large, you need to first ask yourself, how does this affect me and the society? So with this, I would like to hand over the discussion to Ms. Busayo, who is coming to address the audience. But before then, I would really like to thank my panelists. Mr. Sheifumi, you are very, very incredible. You've really, really dropped a lot of messages for us here. And to Ms. Awele, thank you very, very much for taking time out to be with us today. And to Mr. Ejike, thank you very, very much. And I wish you success in your endeavor. Thank you very much.
Good evening once again, everyone. My name is Busayo, and I have my colleague with me here, Dr. Emmanuel. So the Foreign Commonwealth Development Office, popularly known as FCDO, commissioned next year to carry out a project that is titled Project Green Growth. The purpose of this project is to ensure or to see the collaboration points between the UK companies and the Nigerian companies when it comes to the clean energy sector. So the core objective of this project was to map out the Nigerian stakeholders that are in the clean energy space and the UK stakeholders as well, evaluate Nigeria's market readiness for advanced clean energy technology and market enhancement, assessing the gaps in Nigeria's clean energy sector, identifying priority areas of investment. So we took out this research. We carried out this research rather, and we saw some challenges. So, for instance, some of the challenges we saw in Nigeria was poor public awareness and acceptance, the lack of technological know-how, policy and regulatory barriers, financial constraint, lack of infrastructure. For the UK side, we saw there was in the Nigerian market, they listed out there's financial risks, infrastructure gap as well, market uncertainty, political instability, not in terms of election, but like we don't have stable policies and the rest. And lastly, yes, policy and regulatory hurdles. So two questions we would like to ask you is for instance, the UK, we know they're big on wind, they're big on solar as well. They may not be big on hydro, but then they're also exploring hydrogen and others. So my first question is, why do you think, and before I get there, I'm actually very happy because some of the answers we got in the Power Dialogue today, some of the insight that were shared match with the data we have already. So this is like a data validation exercise, of course. So I just want to ask, first question is, why do you think the UK government, why is the UK market not looking, the Nigerian market rather, is not looking, why are we not looking attractive to the UK government? What are the challenges? And the second question I would like to ask is, what do you think we can do to actually attract the UK market? For instance, we have the wind, we have about 10 gigawatts worth of wind energy in Nigeria that we're not looking, let me not say we're not looking at it, because we have the Nigerian Wind Energy Council now that's trying to amplify wind energy in Nigeria, right? And we also have solar. So to an extent, I want to say we've hacked solar markets. So we have these industries that are matching with the UK sectors. And as I've said earlier, Nigeria is the largest economy in Africa. So by default, it should be a market that everyone is looking to invest in. So why do you think the UK government is not, or UK association or UK stakeholders, why are they not looking to invest in Nigeria, aside from the associations like FCDO and other like national agencies? Why are they not looking to invest in Nigeria, and how can we mobilize these investments to come to Nigeria? Thank you. So who wants to go first? Even you guys on the panel sessions can actually shed more light to this. Okay, thank you. Okay.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. So, just as you said, it's just a validation process. We've already done the research. So, okay. And very soon the report is going to be out. It's going to be disseminated. So, your feedback is going to be very instrumental in refining some of our recommendations. So,
thank you.
I just wanted to say that I think you've already mentioned everything. Nigeria will have political instability, like you said. It's risky to invest in our markets because of there are infrastructure gaps. There's also knowledge gap. There are a lot of gaps really in Nigeria, and beyond making ourselves look good for the UK market, I think we should also make ourselves, first of all, look good for us. Because even our own people who can mobilize funds to invest in Nigeria are now scared of investing in Nigeria. And I mean, if you're not going to invest in yourself, why would I invest in you? So if our own people are investing in Nigeria, definitely we'll begin to look better, even with the gaps, even with the risks and the instabilities. So that's what I think. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that.
Okay, I am Engineer Basil Ozulonye, and I'm a renewable energy engineer. Let me speak to insurance. I think you talked about financial risk. Investors need to know that when they put money in renewable energy, whether it's solar or wind or hydrogen or biogas or small hydro, that their money is safe, even if certain changes in the economy occur, like FX or even the political instability. If there is financial insurance, I think that the investors can take more, they'll be incentivized to take more financial risks and support our businesses.
Thank you so much, Engineer Basil, for that.
I'm Josiah by name. I think he mentioned something which most times we tend to overlook. There is a big knowledge gap in Nigeria. For most foreign investors to even look into your country, you have to be a country that can, match with the technology that is out there. You have to be big on manufacturing. The truth is, if we even look at the solar industry, the solar market here in Nigeria, you find out that every solar product, or every product you find was imported. The ones that are being manufactured here in Nigeria by some individuals, you find that there's no good incentives to even make those companies thrive. Rather, you find out that a lot of people go to China, import. So we're very heavy on importation and consumption. Now, if I was someone in the UK government and I wanted to invest in Africa, and I'm looking at Nigeria, for example, and I'll say, okay, I want to invest XYZ amount of money in Nigeria. And I'm looking at how the market is currently. Everybody is importing. Okay, what's the knowledge? How can I even, I want to set up industries here. Who would run those industries? Every young person that is knowledgeable enough is leaving the country as soon as possible, moving their knowledge out there. So first thing we have to even do first is how you said we should look within, you get. So we have to look within and develop ourselves first before you can attract other people into the country. But as long as Nigeria is being run the way it's being run, I don't think it will be easy for us to look attractive to the foreign markets. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
I think the question is specific for UK market, right? Okay, I think one, the ease of doing business in Nigeria is not easy doing business in Nigeria. That's number one. Then my sector, I mentioned hydrogen. If you don't have hydrogen policy, Germany, GIZ that is so serious in Nigeria on hydrogen is not even invested in Nigeria, let alone UK. So we must have such policies that will guarantee the safety of funds coming in. Then non-compliance with the standards. We know the standard, most of our products here are from China, India and stuff, and we know the standard they're bringing in. Then insurance, he mentioned insurance. In my presentation, I said about the project we are doing, Innovate UK, which we are the one that won the project. We are doing it. I know the level of scrutiny, and I know the emphasis they made on insurance. We paid, sent the certificate before anything. Do you understand? And we are not, I don't think we are so serious. We are because government is here. But I don't know how serious we are with insurance. In fact, we need to be more improved on this insurance scrutiny and others before we're able to attract them and other economies. Thank you.
So I'm not speaking this from the government side. I'm speaking this from a lawyer and legal researcher. Is that okay? So in law, there's what is called off record. It means that it won't be recorded. So, all right. So I would just say the question, I said ease of doing business. So that's one. And secondly, investor protection. Yes, that's my contribution.
Without having to define what corruption is, I think that the human face to setting up business is a very big challenge for many people from foreign countries. Yeah, the human face to setting up businesses in Nigeria is a big challenge.
So I just remembered something. During the course of our research, we heard so many things about like creating a competitive market whereby the UK producers, for instance, let's say metering, for instance. Now, okay, metering is a good example. We have people producing meters locally, and they are way more expensive than the UK products and products from China. So, and aside the high cost, we also found the problem of standardization. They're not matching that standard. So, do you think that opening the market to the extent that the UK and other international producers and competing with local producers, do you think it's going to make the Nigerian producers sit up? Because I'm assuming now because no, some people recommended this, right? I'm assuming now that, oh, okay, the UK, they're going to pay for importation costs or exportation from their country, importing into Nigeria. There's so many taxes they have to pay. And this is me in Nigeria. I don't have to pay for anything, and mine is still higher. So how do you think we can mediate this issue? Do you think inviting the UK companies to set up their own shops here, do you think it's going to promote the competitive market? Okay, should I?
No, okay.
All right.
No,
No, keep him let him speak.
okay, so basically, I wanted to add one of the challenges, right? And I noticed that what the words and the feedback we got, we didn't look at the data aspect. At this point, I'm not sure we have the data for us to be able to even make proper decisions. So for me, I believe if we can look at that angle, what level of data do we have access to? For example, we keep saying from the waste management now, 30 million tons of waste is being generated annually in Nigeria. And this is a data that was brought out about 10 years ago. And this is 2024 now. What happened within 2025 now, sorry. So what happened within these 9 years is, as it increased, as it dropped, right? In the energy sector, the same thing. So what exactly do we do about data? Because if we don't have that accurate data, we can't even make decisions in the first place. So that's it for me.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry for keeping you. We are wrapping up already.
Okay, again, my name is Sean Energy. You see, I'm an electronics engineer. And, you know, whenever Nigeria begins to talk about manufacturing things in Nigeria being more costly than in China or in the UK or elsewhere, I mean, China manufactures cheaper than the US. It's not news. So I think that what Nigeria should focus on is doing, you know, there's what we call having a competitive advantage. We have raw material for some of these things. I mean, a meter, for instance, is made of plastic, and then some other components like silicon. You can't do silicon better than China. Nigeria doesn't have a silicon milling plant anywhere, right? So I think we should focus where our strengths lie. Let's not be, so Nigeria will not manufacture Apple phones better than China in the next 10 years. I don't see it happening. So let's not delude ourselves. China will do it better. Let them do what they do, they can do better. Let's do what we can do better. There are a lot of things we've not done even to 10% efficiency. Why are we aiming at things that are beyond our reach? So when you revise your research or your findings, also include the fact that we should look away from things that are too high-tech for us for now and look at things that we can do efficiently and better. There are things that we can export to China. Let's focus on that. There are processed manufactured things that we can make in Nigeria and export to China, and we'll balance the trade. I mean, I think that should make sense. Thank you.
Thank you so much. One more, if there's none, so we could wrap up. Thank you so much for taking us. Thank you so much for giving your feedback. We really appreciate it. And all the things you've said, they're being recorded. We reflect on the data. And I'm sure the attendance has your details. So if you have follow-up questions for what you said, we will get back to you. So thank you so much. I'm going to hand over to Name from the Electricity Hub to give the closing remark. Thank you so much once again. Good night.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for coming today. I would like to express our gratitude on behalf of the Electricity Hub to our panelists for their wonderful contributions and valuable insights, and also to our participants. Thank you for joining in this conversation today. See you at our 103rd Power Dialogue next month. Safe travels back home, and we have refreshments at the back. Thank you very much, and good night.